Hey folks, David Stewart here. I got a great little comment or question on the channel. I wanted to do a short little video on it. Could you do a video on describing characters' appearances? It is hard for me to figure out how to paint a clear picture of a character without being wordy. Now, I was kind of a smartass in my reply, and I asked back, what does Frodo Baggins look like? Because, of course, Frodo Baggins has almost no physical description in Lord of the Rings. We know he's a hobbit and he's middle-aged, and that's pretty much what you got. We don't know if he's taller or shorter than other hobbits. We know that he has the characteristics of hobbits. They're little and have hairy feet and no beard, and they're smaller than dwarves. We don't know if his skin's light or dark or what color his eyes are. We don't have those details. So before we ask the question or answer the question, how can we do it without being too wordy? We need to first decide how much character description do we need to give, just as a general question. And if you were to ask Elmore Leonard here, and this is his 10 Rules of Writing. My sister gave me this book a long time ago, and it's actually much smaller than what it looks like. It looks like, oh, quite a book, but there's maybe, 500 words in it. They're spread out in these like paragraphs, but his rule number 8 here, avoid detailed descriptions of characters, which Steinbeck covered. In Ernest Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants, what do the American and the girl with him look like? She had taken off her hat and put it on the table. That's the only reference to a physical description in the story, and yet we see the couple to know them by their tones of voice, with not one adverb in sight. So if you were to ask Elmore Leonard, he'd say just avoid detailed descriptions. Now, the 10 rules of writing, maybe I'll do a video just specifically on these. I'm pretty sure I've broken all 10, and you shouldn't be afraid to break them, but you should at least be aware of them, because if you're not, then you're likely to go tripping off through the daisies when you ought to be walking a straight and narrow path. Detailed character descriptions. How detailed do they need to be? I think they need to be as detailed as the story requires them to be, and the details that you point out should be there to serve a purpose that's specific to you. So a lot of times authors, they're very character-minded. They imagine characters. Sometimes they draw them on paper, and they think about these characters a lot before they start writing them. And so it's important to them that they provide the details, but those details may not be important to the reader, and they may not be important to the story. So if the character has like a scar along his side of his face, what does that mean to the story? Is he like a veteran? Is it a clue that this guy is, you see the guy in the bar, you notice the scar, and you're like, that guy's been in some fights, and so that's an important element. But if there's just a guy and he has a scar and you never mention it again and it doesn't have any impact, you probably didn't need that detail. So you have to kind of think about, what details do you need? In Lord of the Rings, the details that are necessary for Frodo in the story is that he's a hobbit. He's small. His size is what's important, and the characteristics of hobbits are what's important. The fact that he has blue eyes, that doesn't matter. If you're trying to write something that is, romance, you might put in a lot of those details because you're trying to paint the picture of somebody who's maybe beautiful or something like that. But generally speaking, I am of the opinion that you put in as much detail as is necessary to provide an adequate understanding of the character for their role in the story. If you look at my book, Muramasa Blood Drinker, which I'm rather fond of, this book right here, Tokuyoshi, the main character, this is all the physical description you have of him. A middle-aged samurai. That's it. I don't tell you, like, does he have a narrow nose, or is he tall or short? None of that matters. He's middle-aged, and that's the only thing that is important to the story, because it's about his experience and the fact that he's probably past his prime and things like that. That's what matters. He's mature. That's it. And then the description of Amaya, it's that she's 28 and too old to be unmarried, but she's beautiful. That's it. And I don't have to describe her beauty like full lips or something like that. You just say she's beautiful, and the reader's going to imagine a beautiful woman, and whatever beautiful woman means to them, and that's the impact you want. The impact is a beautiful woman, not a specific kind of beauty or a specific arrangement of physical characteristics, right? If you're trying to write a beautiful woman, you can just say she was a beautiful woman, walked in the door, and you can give some basic description with long blonde curly hair, the kind that was like this, and it made this character think of this other movie actress, right? Which he liked. So you give the details which are relevant to the characters around it, relevant to the story. I'm a fan of detailed character description when when it matters. Now, some people can take the opposite extreme, and I'll mention again, like Steven Erikson. Steven Erikson provides descriptions of non-human races in the very barest detail, enough to let you know that they're really not human. They have too many joints on the hands, or like, you know, they have tusks. They have like tusked teeth. What does that mean? Does that mean, you know, so you kind of imagine that this is a non-human thing based on these details, and that's what you really need to know for that. And that maybe we might need a little bit more to fully describe it. So it depends what you're doing, but generally speaking, less ends up being more. Now, the reason that I like less is more, let me give you the reason, is that having long detailed character descriptions disrupts the flow of the narrative. Most of your narrative is going to be happening in bits of dialogue. And if you take a paragraph in the middle of a conversation to describe a character or talk about something with his backstory, you're interrupting that flow of dialogue, and that can make the reader get lost and have to backtrack. Then you're kind of doing you're doing your story a little bit of a disservice. So I'm of the opinion less is more, not because I don't want to have characters described to me. I like knowing what kind of cool race you've come up with and what they look like. But because usually the way it ends up getting used, it breaks up the flow of the narrative. And there's ways that you can use more direct exposition of cool fantasy races, or of some alien if you're writing science fiction. Put it before the flow of dialogue begins. Don't try to sprinkle it in like you're trying to do, you know, really indirect exposition. Just say they walked in the room, the aliens looked like this, and then you can begin the dialogue, and we don't have to worry about having character descriptions sort of dropped in amongst the dialogue and disrupting the flow of the narrative. So it's for an efficiency reason, not really because I don't like to have characters described to me. So beware how much detail you give, but you know, give enough detail that the reader has an idea who the character is. You don't have to give no details. In fact, giving no details might be, you know, contradictory. The other thing is sometimes, right, like Tauka and Amaya, they have pretty mild descriptions, but I indirectly describe another character in the first act as being rat-like and fat. And that's the characters talking about him. It's like, you keep referring to him as a rodent. You shouldn't talk about a samurai that way. It's like, you'll understand when you see him. It's the teeth. And, you know, there's a physical description of him. And that's preloading. I'm preloading the reader with a negative view of this character, Kuramasa. So when they finally meet Kuramasa, you already don't like him. And so I did that kind of intentionally. The way you describe a character can determine the audience's emotional feelings towards that character, and so you can use that. If that detailed character description is gonna make the audience have a certain emotional reaction to him, then yeah, go for it. Break the rules. So none of these are hard and fast rules. They're just, you know, you may not want to do it, or you may want to do it. You got to be careful with it. And hopefully those are some tips for some ways to make sure that you're doing good character description without it getting in the way of the flow of the narrative. You don't need to worry about it being, you know, efficient in there, but just think of the details that really matter. Does he have rat-like teeth? Is he fat? Is he short? Is he short and he has a short man complex? Those are the things that really matter. So have a good one, and I'll see you guys next time. You can find me at davidvstewart.com, dvspress.com, patreon.com/davidvstewart, and I will see you all next time.